cervical cancer still remains a serious health problem, ranking the third most frequent cancer among women in this country.
So you may be happily at home not knowing you might have the early signs or the early stages of cervical cancer. So the first thing is that it can be completely without any symptoms or signs.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, coming soon to WESN Content Capital.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
As always, we appreciate you starting your day with us. Let's get into this morning's first conversation.
Is the country's healthcare system more at risk, more than ever?
Why it has remained unaddressed for so long.
Political parties get lots of cash, big cash from financiers, and then when they get that now, you can't account for it.
But it's really the specialist nurses who we are in a greater shortfall for.
We can tap into the resources and have them, at least form some mentorship programs.
Highlight our food systems, and which will attract persons from all over the world to come and experience something that actually supports the local economy.
We're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated.
A lot of people don't know that there were attempts to ban the carnival, suppress the carnival.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of have a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man has been the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Jay, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond
wanna-
to me. Respond to me
you?
how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
They believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
WESN.
Good morning and welcome to AM Prime on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish.
I'm Takia Thompson.
So this morning we want to cover two very, I think, important topics. Yes. The first one being the opposition, which is the People's National Movement. They have officially opened its first round of nominations for the upcoming local government elections, specifically targeting seats that it is not currently holding. The party says it remains committed to offering candidates in every electoral district and is inviting citizens to step forward to serve. But the bigger question this morning that I would like to know, is this simply a routine political preparation, or is this a calculated attempt at political redemption and repositioning ahead of future national elections, etc.? So joining us this morning to unpack this aspect is Dr. Shane Mohammed. Good morning, Dr. Mohammed. Welcome to AM Prime.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? It's been a while.
Yes. Is this your first time for the year that you're on? I don't
think so.
Is it?
No.
No.
Well, for you, yes, because I did THA elections the day after THA.
Right.
So
yes.
Not officially the first time with you, not officially with WESN.
No, but just if this was the first time I have you on AM Prime.
Yes.
Yes. Well, it was great. Thanks so much for coming on this morning. So just to set the tone for this and go back to that question, opening nominations specifically for seats not currently held by the PNM, do you think that is a strategic move? Does it signal expansion? Does it signal recovery, some sort of redemption, some sort of like strategic move by the PNM, or is it both?
That's an interesting question, because a local government election is not due until 2027, and the PLM that is recovering from massive THA defeat. And I can understand why a political party in opposition that is still scrambling to find its footing in opposition could want to start the process early, but ahead of the game, because the thing about it is that we the political arena today is very dynamic, extremely dynamic, more than it ever was before. It's one thing today and could be a completely different issue or a scenario tomorrow. But that's something that they are going to have to work around. Right? What I would say is that opening the nomination gives them the opportunity to find the best persons who feel very passionately and feel passionately about the organization. And those who believe that they can serve best in constituency, in electoral districts that are not traditionally held by the PNM. I don't know that the seats that are traditionally not held by the PNM will swing. And that possibility of, or probability of swinging in favor of the PNM is all dependent, not just for seats traditionally held by the opposition and held by the government, but that putting people to start campaigning and start working in seats that is held by the UNC traditionally. That's a long haul. That's a very long process in terms of it's getting to know the ground, getting to understand the issues affecting the people. But it could also be tedious and tiring depending on when they're selected. So opening nominations is one thing. The process by which one becomes a candidate is the next part of it. So it allows the PNM the opportunity to look at it from a very human resource building perspective, very corporate perspective. The question is, opening it is fine. Then what? How long after is the opening nominations? How soon after is it closed? And then someone is screened and selected. And how long are you going to put somebody on the ground for a local government election? 9 months, 10 months, 6 months, which is good. But you have to take into consideration the national issues that would be existing and how rapidly it changes, how quickly the government is able to get resources on the ground and help people in a way that allows them to deliver services. I mean, I had a conversation during Carnival with someone who was once an independent senator. And he said to me, he said, I'm giving the government, we can't just give them a year, you have to give them more than a year to come into office, to assess what's happening, to start planning for how they're going to address certain matters and issues, and then they implement it. And that takes time, especially for a government that is coming into office for the first time in 10 years. So that's a process. So let's just say, I mean, look at this, just take for example how dynamic the opening ceremony of the head of government was on Tuesday evening, and then how explosive it was yesterday with regard to the Prime Minister walking away with so many gains, that I think that is the news from the Tuesday evening and what was said at the speech and all of that is now drawn out by all of the good things that that Trinidad Tobago is positioned to achieve or to do or to start the process of doing in order to deliver on certain promises for the country and that the UNC and the government promised during that campaign. So the dynamism of the politics and it's quickly moving could be a double-edged sword for a new candidate from the People's National Movement coming on the scene or getting onto the ground too early. They could experience burnout. They could find themselves, having to compete against popularity of ministers and government successes and that sort of thing. So that's a chance that the PNM has to take. But also it has to be very strategically positioned and timed when that candidate or those candidates are put on the ground. And yes, you're right, it's all about repositioning and all about redemption. But that is also those things are subjected to the contexts and conditionalities that exist at the time when those persons are placed on the ground to start doing it. So it's not going to be easy, and it has to be very well timed, because something may look good, may look bad now because of a narrative, because of agendas, because of certain things. But the reality is, I stand the risk, and I said this to another journalist yesterday, I stand the risk of turning biased. But how else do you explain or describe all of the successful meetings that the Prime Minister had yesterday before she left to come home to Trinidad and Tobago? Those were wins, huge wins. And what is even the biggest win of all is that she has a sit down with the US President. Not many small island developing states have had that opportunity since he came into office in January 2025.
Before, now, that point that you just made, actually have another point to make on top of that. But before I get there, I want to ask about just local government in its entirety. Can we genuinely see, or can that genuinely reflect political strength for a certain party? Let's say, I mean, when we talk about that word redemption, do you think that local government elections can realistically repair the national image of a particular party?
Well, it did to the UNC, to be fair to them, and to be fair to everyone. It has. The local government elections of 2013 were very informative and very instructive for the ruling party then, which was the party of the UNC and its partners, because it was midterm of that administration, and it was a serious election that led to a reversal of the 2010 results, where the partnership had 11 corporations compared to the PNM had 3. And then in 2013, it flipped from 11-3 to the PNM getting 9 and the UNC getting 5. In 2016, it started to improve. 2016, 2019, somewhere it also got better. And then in 2023, which was what it did a holding of 7-7. But the funny thing about the 2023 local government election is that while there was 7-7, there was an increase in the number of electoral districts that was won by the UNC as it prepared itself for the next general election, which was due in 2025. So yes, that can be so, and it could be it can be a launch pad for both political parties with regard to redemption, maintaining the status quo. So while the PNM and the UNC couldn't right now hold 7 seats, 7 corporations each, the dynamic is different because the government holds the Point Fortin and Liberal seats, and those seats are very are linked to the Point Fortin borough. The Sandy Grande seats, all of the Sandy Grande corporation is UNC. All of the Superior corporations UNC and the surrounding seats. So there's really just 13 seats that make up the government, the opposition, and that is primarily held in Sunapuna Piaco, Arima, Dingo Martin, Sawa Lavington, and Port of Spain. Now, interestingly enough, in the last local government election, the US was very close to capturing the San Fernando City Corporation. And I believe that in this local government election, the one that comes next, the UNC is going to be focusing on taking as best as possible, which is an uphill task, but not impossible. It all depends on the momentum, it all depends on the success and the strengthening of and the belief in what the PNM narrative is. So the places that I believe would be most contentious would be Digger Martin, Grande, Point Fortin, San Fernando, and to lesser extents, Sunapuna Piaco, which is one of the largest ones, but would be a huge win if they capture it, given now that Sunapuna Piaco would have parts of It's big, so it would probably be St. Joseph, St. Augustine, Tunapuna, Nahokota are part of their Arupa, part depending on Arupa Maloney, W America to some extent, but what's W America, but that's more into the arena. So it's going to be very interesting that how it all depends on voter turnout as well, which has been consistently low compared to the general election. And if there's a high turnout of support in favor of the government as opposed to the opposition, we could be witnessing certain results flipping and some jaw-dropping results. Now, if at the time when the local government election is called, the government has not found its stronger footing with regard to delivery of services and promises made, that all now makes it an interesting competition. So there's a gamble. As you might see, the government is not necessarily, I mean, there were whispers of, and I don't know where those whispers came from, because that's very strange, that the Prime Minister is not one to hold an election unreasonably and unnecessarily early. And then there was this hype. I mean, suddenly you see so the PNL saying they're going into local government mode. The Bukele Pandey's party saying that she's getting ready to contest all the seats. And then the Prime Minister comes and says, I don't know what all this fuss is about local government, but I have no intention of pulling a snap local government election. And she's right, because after you battled a general election in 2025, THA came and they won one in 2026. The time is flying too quickly to spend so much focus, I should say, on campaigning. The real thing now is for the government to settle down into its delivery operations and what it's going to be its key deliveries. And everybody's talking about unemployment and job creation and that sort of thing. But even that has a role that I would suggest, and I would say has a role for the private sector to play. And because the government can't do everything on its own, and we can't have, so then somebody's going to come and ask me, well, what about what the government did with regard to seat of the If European seat of was meant to be full-time jobs, the program was meant to be a springboard for people to get who were unskilled to become semi-skilled and then to go into other markets for job opportunities, not that people would become dependent on it. So it was supposed to be like a training ground where people could come, gain skill sets, and then move on into private sector jobs and that sort of thing. It turned into institutionalized, as we like to say, institutionalized 10 days. And people became dependent on it, and then obviously we've heard the Prime Minister never spoke about it being corrupted and being, used for other nefarious activities. People would like the status quo to stay and the norms to continue. But when those norms are like parasites, not the people or the organism, I should make that very clear. I'm not talking about people in this instance. I'm talking about the institutions that were created in order to be that platform for other opportunities. When they become parasites, that is, rooted in corruption, rooted in, negative activities that cost the government millions of dollars, and it's a way of kind of suppressing certain behaviors, that's not something that's lucrative for a party or a government that wants to make institutional and constitutional changes in a framework where they've won for the second time, which is like very rare, a constitutional majority. So now is the time to take the table and upset the apple cart and reconstruct. Now, somebody's going to also say, well, CPIP and URP is taking too long, whatever the alternative is taking too long, because they should have had a plan. No, you don't necessarily plan that you could, you could evolve and things will be a work in progress. But when there's a level of urgency in rooting out activities that you don't want in governance, you have to destroy it and then recreate it. How fast to recreate it is dependent on the skill sets and expertise of those involved.
Now, what about considering the that turnout for local elections is usually or often lower, and then we've seen for general elections that the turnout was, I think, about half, or slightly more than half of the voter turnout. Now, if that trend continues, do you think it weakens any chance of that redemption narrative, or it weakens any chance of the PNM, trying to step up or paint a different picture as to what they can bring?
Yes, it can. And you see the problem that I'm having with PNM. They seem to not understand. Yes, I understand many of them, it's the first time in opposition, right? But opposition is about strategy and timing. It's about what is your goal with regard to ensuring that people feel less confident in a government and more confident in an opposition. So much so that they are motivated, highly motivated, to come out and vote against a government in favor of the opposition. Today's the 26th. In 2 days' time, it will be 10 months of a new administration. That's pretty new. That's pretty young. That's very much, some people are probably still, some have quickly adjusted into ministerial portfolios. Some are still struggling to find a footing, to sit down and find a niche that they can capture in order to make a name for themselves in terms of delivery. We're dealing with conditions of crime. We just had a situation with the social bill, and it is frustrating because the social bill collapsed when there's a level of urgency, and that you've heard narrators where we'll go to plan B and you're made up like plan. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was asked about the social bill, and she said, the independent senators just didn't agree, and that they thought it was too draconian and that's what it was. But the social bill has proven to Jamaica to be a very interesting but also very successful thing that has led to dramatic falls in their murder rates and their criminal records. So, and Trinidad and Tobago is also very much indeed and in need of an apparatus of that sort to contain people who really and truly have no intentions of doing good in this country. But also it's a form of monitoring movement, monitoring activities. It's so much bigger than what people makes it out to be, because it also contains a certain level of information and intelligence. Now, somebody asked me the other day, more intelligence? Yeah, because when you're dealing with advanced, institutionalized criminal activity, you want as much information from central commanding area space to on the ground and within the localities that the problem exists in order to get the best information. One of the things we have to start thinking about is thinking outside the box and thinking innovatively in governance, which means therefore that you must have to start thinking cooperatively too. So corporate governance is part of the thing in order to get the objective or the goal that you want to be successful and to the results to come, not just when in a medium long term, but in a short term as well. So it's a process. How does I'm saying all of that to say how the opposition positions itself in order to capture the minds of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Because if you go on social media, you're going to realize that there's an active opposition collective of noisemakers in some instance that are actively trying for every single day to win, to cause some mischief or to cause some doubt that the government is doing absolutely nothing. And it's from where I sit and observing the behaviors and the attitudes and the language and the approach of some people, that's not opposition politics. That's not politics. That's just plain old brutishness, right? And I'm not afraid to talk about people not being critical and analytical in their approach and strategic in their approach. In fact, this is going to sound very bad, so I apologize for it sounding bad from now, but it's as if people are becoming like, in those potholes that are homeless and then they're side the road and they're tire chasers, or they just don't want to stay in their yard and the owner's going to sleep, so they just decide they're going to be bad on the road and they run along every single car that passes and running on their tires. And if one person makes a bad move, they could get knocked down. That's what is happening. They're tire chasers that are looking, they're not strategic, and that opposition politics is about strategy. And being cohesive, and then being coordinated, but also being very tactful in terms of what you say, how you say it, when you say it, and what are the things that you attack the government on. So everybody went crazy talking about Prime Minister being disrespectful and she's unfit to be in office and blah, 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 blah. You know what? There are people in CARICOM saying to me today, she was right, that there are problems, that there are institutional flaws, that there are procedural flaws, administrative flaws, that it's about time she come and somebody reads the Riot Act, and she's the best person to do it because she's been there before. She understands how these things work, and there's something that something needs to be said, and she herself said it. You can't want to make changes. You can't come in as a Prime Minister for the second time, going to CARICOM, nod and smile, when you knew, and that speech was very instructive when she said, all of us here, sitting here, were in opposition once, and we probably most likely will be in opposition again. But does that mean that when we're in opposition, our voices are not heard and we're not included in the dialogue and we're irrelevant because this is all about the heads of government? Then that's not democracy, that's autocracy. And that's not what CARICOM was created for. So people who did not like it, but the fact of the matter is, this Prime Minister, and here's the other part of it, right? This Prime Minister has campaigned for Prime Ministership, so she's already attained it. When the forum arises for her to say what needs to be said, she is going to have to say it, because the likelihood of her seeking re-election again in 5 years is highly unlikely. But the opposition leader has only now started her campaign for Prime Minister, which right now, she was in the first 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, up until the THA election, which was just a month ago, she was battling the remnants of the Keith Rowley administration and the Keith Rowley loyalty. And I can't say for sure, with definition and with confidence, that she has gotten past that yet, because there are possible elements of that support for Keith Rowley and for Stuart Young that exists in the party that believe that Stuart Young and others may better be fit for the role because they're more aggressive, they make the most noise, and people go for those things in opposition. And people may not agree that the opposition leader passiveness is needed. But it's not about being passive, it's about being strategic. I saw her, I listened to the opposition leader last night on the news, and she was so out of character. And some of the questions, I was just shaking my head and saying, that didn't make sense. That was a bad move. You should have just waited. You could have crafted your language to be not as critical because you don't know what was coming next. But like everybody who is opposed to the government, who wants to create this scenario where everything is bad, they can do nothing good, she's the worst thing ever, blah, 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 blah. Here's what. And I have a message for them. You see the period in which the government, the former government, governed Trinidad and Tobago. One, the rule order was very different. It was governed and led by Joe Biden, who wanted stability, who wanted peace, who wanted inclusivity, who wanted, norms to continue. And they operated in that traditional behavior. And here comes Donald Trump, who probably is not going to, well, by his own constitution, doesn't have a third term. That's almost impossible, right? But has the opportunity now, even in the as unpopular as he may be, he also has the attitude of, I really don't have to care, because I have a legacy to create for myself as president, who's a comeback kid, like Kamala Persad, who's a comeback kid. So I will upset, and I will make people vex, and I will recreate norms, and do things differently, and upset the world, because you know what? Probably upsetting the world may cause them to start thinking differently. That's a very volatile scenario to be in, and it's also challenging status quos and challenging norms and challenging traditions and challenging behaviors. That is dynamic and volatile for geopolitics. but it's also quite exciting for political scientists because we get to see theories that were theorized decades and centuries ago get torn apart and thrown into the garbage and see them recreated. And we have to now study whether there's a new word or a new name or a new approach to certain approaches and that sort of thing in the international political world and in the international political economy. The thing is, you can't want to speak in mundane and slow and diplomatic and carry yourself in a particular way as Dr. Brown is doing. In the world where it's about speed, volatility, rapid responses, you're going down into rapids, trying to make sure you're finding for things, because world leaders are also jostling for world dominance and hegemony. The United States is no different, and Trinidad and Tobago, who has been stagnant economically, from an energy perspective, from a regional perspective, has just been totally line. Prime Minister said, putting your head in the sand, behaving like realities don't exist. You now have to come in and compete with all of what is going on in the global space to be at the front of the line, not in the peripheral view of the world leaders, but in the direct view of world leaders. And you have to choose your alliances very strategically in order to gain maximum benefit. And the truth is, if you don't understand that and you can't realize what is happening in the world, then that's why you probably need to sit down in opposition and live, unfortunately.
So, Dr. Shane, just now I want to shift the conversation a bit. And as we're talking about, you know, what the Prime Minister said at the heads of government, the CARICOM heads of government, when speaking about the part of the speech where she spoke about unity, and she spoke about that when we look at unity in practical terms, for CARICOM, right, I think this is a conversation that we've touched on many times. What does unity actually look like for CARICOM, right? Now, she strongly defended cooperation with the United States, and then we also saw that she was invited to a summit along with a few selected CARICOM heads as well. It was either one or two. But if that is so, I know just now you were saying, you know, sometimes you just have to do the tough things, right? You can't just be diplomatic or, you know, tiptoe. You kind of have to be bold, right, with things that the decisions that you make, things that you say as a leader. Now, if that is so, then what really does that leave for unity within CARICOM? Because you also mentioned just now making alliances, making the right alliances, but shouldn't CARICOM be a major alliance as well?
Well, we can align on the things that we agree on. We can align on the things that collectively benefit all of us. We can align on the things that unites our people, that benefits them collectively. But specifically, and this is where it comes down, our economics are completely different. Trinidad and Tobago is seeking to boost its energy industry while at the same time diversifying its economy and moving into different areas. I know, look at the work, the Minister of Public Administration and AI is always out of the country. Well, why is he always out of the country? He's always out of the country because he's seeking international partnerships, and he's going to the parts of the world where AI is way advanced than we can ever imagine, and the technology, the engineering, the frameworks are way advanced. Trinidad and Tobago has a lot to benefit from those countries that can invest here and those companies, because we need foreign direct investment. We need foreign direct investment in massive proportions. I would envision, I were to sit in a government with any prime minister and be facing the struggles and challenges that the government is faced with today, I want to be able to go out there and get as much persons to see Trinidad and Tobago as a lucrative and an attractive space where they can also diversify their resources and their expertise to a part of the world that is untouched or lacking or behind. And I want to be able to come in there and do as much as I can to put them in modern, get them up to speed, but also utilize them as a hub for other things within the region and whatever that region may be. That's what I would like for Trinidad and Tobago. So I support that. The other thing is our foreign policy is completely different. I listened to Delcy Rodriguez opening her trap yesterday. I'm like, lady, you could be out of office. You are in office at the behest of a foreign power, and you are lucky that the entire apple cart in your country didn't get turned upside down. And you should be grateful, and you should be gracious. And in fact, you are still under threat because you don't have full stability in your country, and you're very highly dependent on the goodwill of the United States to be able to that you are still in office. Because while everybody was talking about regime change, that did not happen. What you had was the indictment of a world leader, and how that plays out is America's business. But at the same time, Trinidad and Tobago has its own right to align, the same way as she doesn't want to admit that she's playing ball with the U.S. for her own political survival and for her own political stability and her own emergence as someone that is seen as legitimate and is seen as not directly aligned. And that is something she could never shake off. And as long as she continues to have venom for Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister, she's also always going to be looked at by the Americans as a problem, because you can't cooperate, you can't behave, you can't shy away from your authoritarian behaviors because it was your comfort zone, but it was also your luxury for all the years that you were in office. So that side, that a part of it, that imagine, and we have to deal with that aspect of it. And Prime Minister's right. Well, you're not sitting on the doorstep, or you're not sitting next door to Venezuela. All you have to deal with is illegal migration. You all want free movement of people, but there's only a few parts of the country that can actually deal with free movement of people because they have similarities that you all could benefit from, and you all don't have sociological issues that I am dealing with. So how can I have free movement? Right now, CSME works for me. There's a process by which Trinidad and Tobago is engaging persons to come in and do work, as well as the way Trinidad and Tobago citizens are going out to get work. Right now, I can't have free movement of people because I'm still trying to figure out whether I have Venezuelan terrorists and gang leaders in my country. When I can deal with that and make sure that everybody who's a Venezuelan is effectively registered, properly I should say, registered and accounted for, and who needs to be here is here and who needs to be out is gone, then we can talk free
so then
movement of people.
It's safe
That's
to say
something
you
that they don't seem to
second
understand in that context.
Yeah, it's safe to say you second that her pause on that free movement within CARICOM states.
The free movement aspect is something that is good on paper and in principle, but it's not something that we're ready for yet, and we need to deal with the issues that are affecting us now, correct them, and then advance ourselves in other areas.
But do you think it's something that would be good for, looking at that CARICOM coming together
yes,
to create unity at some point in time?
As an eventuality, for sure. I mean, that we could benefit from. But we also have to take into consideration that we have a problem with regard to employment issues here in Trinidad and Tobago. And the goal is to bring unemployment for our local population to as low as possible, as fast as possible. That's also on the agenda. So I can't want to have an aim as a government to hire as much people as possible and get people in jobs, sustainable jobs in long term, and also deal with those persons who are here who illegally, who may be occupying spaces that Trinidadians could possibly hold if they so desire. And so there's too many things happening here now for me to go, okay, yeah, I want to be in CSN, I want to be in free movement. Let me do that. Is causing a mess. We have to first deal with things that are the issues, corrective problems that we are faced with now. It may take 6 months, it may take a year. For all you know, in 1 year's time, in 18 months' time, you can hear Trinidad and Tobago is moving towards advancing free movement of people within CARICOM, because we've stabilized the nation. We've stabilized things in a way where we can afford that. But the reality is, we have, I say this, while we are all touched by the Caribbean Sea and its beauty, the bottom line is we are not all at the same level. And because we are all not at the same level, even our longitude and latitudinal positioning in the region, as it pertains to in relation to other closer islands, is very different from what Trinidad is facing with regard to Venezuela, what Guyana is facing with Venezuela, what Suriname might be facing with regard to Guyana and Venezuela, what Jamaica is facing in the north, what the Bahamas is facing up north. It's all different because of our where we sit. I mean, once we understand that as individual states, we are dealing with different issues, and as it pertains to our foreign policy and our security issues, we have the right to take different pathways because the context and conditionalities and issues are different. Where, for example, when it comes to renewable energy, we can have a conversation. When it comes to climate change, we can have a conversation. When it comes to rising sea levels, we need to have a conversation. There are different things that we would be able. Food security, we would probably need to have a conversation because that is something that has been on the table for a long time. How do we, as a collective region, lower imports and increase exports? What are the things that we could work upon from an agriculture food security perspective that we can benefit from collectively? Those are the conversations that we can have. But you can't tell me that we have to sing Kumbaya and dance around a fire and put our heads in the sand like ostriches and say, yeah, all is well. In fact, I was appalled that the opposition leader actually said, when I listened to her, that she was hoping for niceties and for the Prime Minister to go there and make a speech, a nice, fluffy speech, and one that was diplomatic and respectful and all encompassing. And in my mind, I said, so to sum that whole thing up, you really wanted the Prime Minister, you would have feel happy to know the Prime Minister wanted to carry come and just lie.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I saw the opposition's statements about this speech, and I think I was telling somebody yesterday too, I personally believe that the Prime Minister's speech was risky. It had a lot of risky elements, but I think a lot of what she said needed to be said. However, I do want to mention, the aspect of security and crime cooperation. Do you think that there's a contradiction between calling for that regional security cooperation, and then, but we're also struggling with our own internal crime situation? Do you think that there's a contradiction there, or there could be a contradiction there?
There's not a conflict or not contradiction. Why? Because the Caribbean Basin Initiative, which people should do some research on, is a crime-fighting intelligence gathering initiative that exists between all of CARICOM and the United States, and it is designed for there to be intelligence sharing, information gathering, and a certain level of detection and policing. Now, that's one. The agreement that has been signed between the United States and Trinidad and Tobago, where the acronym is skipping my brain right now, but where we allow for security purposes for that national security, international security corporation, the U.S., to come here and be part of be present in Trinidad and Tobago for the purpose of, securing borders, ensuring international peace and security and that sort of thing. Is also a part of it. And then there's CARICOM Impacts. CARICOM Impacts is part of our national security, our regional security apparatus that exists. The headquarters exist in Trinidad and Tobago. Here's the next thing. Trinidad and Tobago is the single most, it is the number one contributor, the largest contributor to the CARICOM budget annually. And it has always been so from inception. And so what the Prime Minister also went to CARICOM and said, without saying it, and this is how I sum it: I, Trinidad and Tobago, am the largest contributor to the budget of CARICOM, and I would like to have value for my money. It is not for it to be utilized in a country where I am trying to find money to boost the various sectors and to jumpstart and re-engineer my economy. I'm not sending money to CARICOM for you to use as for partying and for a playground. Get yourselves in order. You have a responsibility that comes with me spending the money to support you all. You can't want to disrespect Trinidad and Tobago, any element of it, when you are highly dependent on the money that it is utilized sending in order to have a functioning secretariat and other apparatuses, which is fair as well. You people we live in a world because we have little resources. We must account for what we are utilizing money for. And if we are sending large sums of money into CARICOM for efficiency, sustainability, effectiveness, accountability, transparency, agility, then she's also right to redirect her. So there's no conflict, there's no contradiction. The thing about it is we can work, and she was also right in saying that who in CARICOM can assist Trinidad and Tobago outside of Jamaica with its issues? Nobody. And really and truly, we're looking for strategies. We're looking for institutional and operational approaches that could benefit us to deal with crime and criminality, and to take it, there's no way it would be a miracle if we eradicate it. That's your ultimate goal. But second to that ultimate goal would be to ultimately bring it down to as low as possible in a population as that it is seen as reasonably or proportional to the population. So, the apparatuses that exist in the CARICOM framework, and what our goals and objectives are for Trinidad and Tobago is not contradictory. It's actually supposed to be complementary.
The next thing, when we look at the Prime Minister, she made a comment. She said Trinidad and Tobago does not currently experience the reality of a zone of peace. And that was another point that many people took out of her speech and were kind of like, well, how could she say something like that? And then calling on, what do you think that says, or in your view, in your opinion, signals to the rest of CARICOM, or even represent for us here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, she said it very specifically as well, right? So she didn't just say we're not a zone of peace, full stop. She went into detail as to why we're not a zone of peace. We're not a zone of peace because we've not settled down, and we've not addressed, and we've not effectively dealt with the issues that are affecting Haiti. Haiti is riddled by gang warfare. Haiti's sociological framework, its political sociology, has completely been eroded and broken down, and it is corrupted by gangs. Its people are living in fear, and they are literally paying taxes to gang leaders. And since the assassination of its former president and that whole collapse of that government, it has been plain out anarchy. And there has been a committee that was working towards restoring democracy and good governance and order in Haiti. And that committee of CARICOM has not been successful. Donald Trump has come in and he said, you know what? This is also a problem in my back door, because in my backyard. And this is a serious problem in my backyard, and I need to deal with it. When you go in your backyard, if your backyard is very well manicured and your benches and barbecue spots and walkways and it's very well nice lawn, and you come out one day and you see a big stink dirty looking ant patch or batch up there in the middle of a thing, you're going to want to dig it up and find the source and deal with the problem. That's what it is. Haiti is riddled with criminality, and they have to deal with that. The Panama and the United States are going to work together to formulate a plan that is going to deal with that. And Trinidad has committed itself that if you need help there and resources there, we're going to be a part of that too. So that's one zone of, that's not a zone of peace. You also have, up to yesterday, Venezuela behaving in a way that they could talk to Trinidad as they want, tell Trinidad what they want, threaten Trinidad, threaten Guyana, tell Guyana, half of all your country is mine. I want it because I want all of that oil and resources, and I will take it by force if I have to. That is madness. That is not a zone of peace because that's a threat there as well. It's unsettling. And then domestically, we in Trinidad and Tobago need to bring crime down. Crime obscures our peace. And especially if you live in a hotspot, you also know how to adjust to a life which is unfair to law-abiding citizens having to adjust their life to suit the operations and behaviors of criminal elements. That is also madness. How many videos have we seen circulating online as it pertains to miscreants, jumping fences and going into people's yard, breaking down their fence, cutting the fence, going with their vehicles? We saw a scenario where, thank God, the lady had the blowhorn. That is what scared people away, the fellas away from her house, alerted the neighbors. That is not peace. So she went into details as to why we're not a zone of peace. Because for there to be a zone of peace, there must be peace and prosperity, a high level of security across the region. There are people that are leaving Haiti and jumping on boats and going into different parts of the region and causing disruption as well. So I think that was an area that she made sure she was very specific about.
So another phrase that was highly discussed would have been who vexed loss, and that would have raised strong opposition and opinions. But why do you think this comment resonated that way?
With what? As it pertains to what?
As it pertains to the statement when the Prime Minister was making it, she mentioned, coming along the line, she mentioned who vexed lost, and persons pulled that and began to have strong opinions on it. But why do you think it resonated that way with citizens?
She said it again yesterday. She said, I didn't mean it to offend. But she said, I had to say what I needed to say to correct the issues that are affecting and stymieing CARICOM. And it also is tied to an indirect conversation about, but I'm spending money here, and I need to see value for money. I can't be spending 22%. I can't be contributing 22% of the budget for CARICOM, which is the largest chunk of the budget, and then you're turning this thing into a playground, and you are highly remunerated. Do you know that Trinidad and Tobago citizens do not occupy and have not occupied the higher echelons and executive positions of the CARICOM in a very long time? They are in the lower numbers. In fact, how many of us try to get into the CARICOM secretariat in different roles? I'm a governance expert. My PhD is in governance, right? And I knew I could work in ensuring and strengthening regional governance frameworks. I could do it. I am more than qualified, given my international academic exposure, my work in Trinidad and Tobago, my experience in governance, my understanding of politics, international political economy, public administration. And there are many like me, right, who can work in CARICOM and advance this institution. But we don't get in, right? We don't get even past the application process in some instances. And it is given to others within the region. So this who vexed loss thing, I believe it was unscripted. It wasn't on the script, but it was a natural slip of the tongue, and probably it was it probably was worth the slip because it carried through the point that, she felt so passionate about what she was talking about. If you are vexed, who vexed loss? I have something to say, and I'm going to take the platform, own the platform, and say what I need to say, because we can't be doing the same thing over and over. She said it as it pertains to the agenda. I laughed at it. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they said, send me that clip, because we have been trying to change this agenda for the longest while, because we need to do things differently. And the agenda should be not fixed, where it's the same agenda every time, it's like, when would we do something differently? So yes, let me tell you something. I've come to realize in the last 10 months, if you say, if there's no space for human error, because clearly in the age of AI, we voted for a government of robots who don't have emotions, who don't have low days. You think every day I can be sharp and on the draw? There are days even if an interview, my brain goes blank and I'm trying to figure out the word out, and the word might be sarcasm, and I know what I want to say, but I can't find the word sarcasm. That don't mean I dotish. It doesn't mean that I'm callous. We have moments and days like that. Your brain is multifunctioning sometimes because you're doing several things. The other day I was doing a lecture in public. I was lecturing a module in the MBA program, and the phone rang and it was the news asking about what was going on in CARICOM, which is politics and international politics as regional politics. And my brain had to switch from theories as it pertains to reflective practice in business administration and entrepreneurship to politics, right? That's so people, we have to understand, they are going to be naysayers, and it is orchestrated, it is organized. You're going to have the dashboard warriors and the keyboard warriors that are going to be talking. But how many people are taking the time to do the research, effective research, actual research, get the facts, and put it out there and defend the facts as they know it to be, without politicizing it? Very few. Because what everybody who's opposite to the government is looking for is for quick, cheap wins so that it can stick and that we can utilize it and beat that point, because that was a strategy used between 2010 and 2015 and it was very successful. But that same strategy will not work because people who voted in 2025 demonstrated that they were absolutely, completely and utterly frustrated by the governance that had been experienced for the period 2015 to 2025. Now that's one part of it. In addition to, the PNM as an organization has to figure out whether it has gathered enough support and re-engineered that public, that it's the confidence of its membership that this is the way we ought to go, and we have to back this particular leader and her team to take us to the next level, whatever that next level is. Have they settled their internal issues and problems? It could very well be that because of those underlying issues, the best thing to do is attack the government for every single thing. And if Kamala Kappa-Salvi happens to feel sleepy and yawn in the course of a meeting, somebody's going to take a video and say, look, she's so bored with these people, she don't even have time to respect them. She yawn out. That's the kind of thing that is happening. Who vexed laws, they ran with it without putting it into context. Everything is said within a context. Another moderator told me the other day, he said, Dr. Marvin, you're not being specific. I said, well, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I need to be so specific, and specificity matters because we are time, this interview itself, within a time frame, and I need to be able to make myself as clear as possible in the shortest period of time and get my point across, and sometimes specifics may not be the way to go because it's going to take a longer time, and then the interviews, if I take long in explaining what I need to explain in the discussion that we're having, then it may also obscure the next guest that you'll have. So that's just how it is.
I just want to, I got this philosophical question, in a sense, just to tie everything in. When we look at CARICOM evolving, do you think that it is evolving into a security-first regional bloc, or does it risk becoming primarily a diplomatic forum without any sort of enforcement power? And this is just based off of what we've seen at the meeting.
To start with, Naomi, they have none.
Yeah.
Right? Everything has to be, so there was the most recent thing is that decisions are taken, I think, if I'm not mistaken, by consensus, and there's no space for dissent, but I think there was an adjustment to that policy, right? But there's nothing, there's no apparatus that takes into consideration that ensures that when decisions are made at the CARICOM Heads of Government Conference, that it is binding on nations and member states to implement. And that's a flow. So let me give you an example. In 2018, when Prime Minister Motley was chair of the CSME, she gave a mandate that Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Suriname were the best positioned member states to become the breadbasket of the region because we were not prone to hurricanes and extreme weather. We had the land, we had the skill set, etc., etc., etc. 2018 to 2026 is how much years? 8 years, right? 8 years, and we don't have food security. That 8 years, there was one person in Trinidad and Tobago named Keith Rowley was in power, who last week was complaining because his pigs, his sheep, his goats, and his chickens were hungry because the blue wave didn't bring the feed across. Why then, therefore, in your 10 years as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, but more so a Tobagonian who believes himself to be strongly rooted in his Tobagonianism, why didn't he create and invest in a feed milling system in Tobago that would have met its domestic need to deal with that level of livestock feed and that high level of farming that goes on over there? You won't blame that on Kamala? But you were there. You were there for 10 years. And that's a simple thing, like a feed mill, to meet the efficiency of feeding the animals in Tobago is not done. So food security is one aspect of it, right? And that is and that's the, if you show you a way. If you were to ask him that, I would love to know if we ask him that question, what would the answer be? Because one of the things that CARICOM doesn't have is it's not the decisions taken doesn't call the government and the members into account, nor does it bind them. So the women fancy their emotions and feelings and if they think it's important. So that's one. As a security block, until people understand that security for Barbados and security for St. Lucia is different from security to Jamaica and security for Trinidad, and understand that sociological framework in which we're all operating at, and why it is going to be different for each nation, only then we could be a full-fledged security bloc. Right now, what the Prime Minister is saying, and many others, and I have been saying for years, it's a talk shop. Money spent for expensive accommodation, fancy cocktails, dinners and whatnot. People get little tags and goodie bags and whatever. But it's a fancy talk shop. That's what it has been for the last couple of years, well, the last few decades. And the time has come for it to be a serious organization that looks upon itself, does the institutional reform that needs to be done in order for us to move forward. And if you want an eyesore of part of why we failed, look at the CCJs.
Yeah. Dr. Mohammed, before we close, I have one more question for you. This is not my question. I saw this on social media yesterday, and I found it to be, well, I want to get your thoughts on it. Now, when we look at, we spoke about the CARICOM unity and all of that, but why is it that when you look at the EU, we see, and every time we're talking about, we have discussions surrounding the EU, we see they have more unity than we have here within CARICOM. Now, why do you think that is?
Well, you see, let's understand something, and that's a really good question, Dora. From having taught CSME and CARICOM relations at the University of the West Indies back whenever, I still remember the code, it's called 3067. The CARICOM was fashioned after the European community, which evolved into the European Union. Here's the key word. The CARICOM, Caribbean community, is fashioned after the European community, which evolved, keyword, into the European Union. Yeah. So there was an evolution. And an evolution as it pertains to different sectors, steel and iron and steel, energy, money, legislation, parliament, and climate, you name it. Was every member state at the time. What they did, they started small and then they expanded, right? And that starting small, it was 7 nations in Brussels. That's why there's a Benelux. It was the Benelux bloc. It was Brussels, So it was Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. That's the Benelux bloc. So you started small, and then you grew into more and more and more nations. In fact, today, I think Moldova is in. There are other nations that are on the periphery of EU that want in. Why do they want in? Why are they clamoring for recognition into the European Union? Well, there's an economic benefit as it pertains to currency. There's economic benefit as it pertains to free movement. There's economic benefit as it pertains to security. Not everybody's at the same levels of development. And there are contingencies in place to help them along the way. We don't have those frameworks and structures here. We don't have Parliament. They have the European Court of Justice, which is very binding, right? We don't. Our CCJ is struggling. Our CCJ is struggling. The major countries in the region doesn't have confidence in the CCJ, and that's something that they should sit down and talk about and reflect upon, right? And I can give them a reflective practice framework, to take a look at it and discuss. But why has something as simple as the CCJ not come to full fruition and full realization? And maybe it's time to consider what the future of the CCJ looks like, because that's an expense, right? So, and every institution in the region that carries a car, CAR, that is aligned to CARICOM, there's money spent. There's money spent and resources that are expended, and there's an expectation that there's going to be value for money and real results. So there's also, on the flip side, those institutions that are working really well, right? But major institutions that supposed to have been well advanced by now, 25 years after, are not. And we keep asking the same question time and time again. Why are we not like the EU? Because we have not done the work, the research, done the frameworks, done the institutional assessment, self-reflection, self-assessing. We refuse to speak very frankly about the matters that are that is preventing us from moving. We are all at various levels of development, or we're all at a very different economic level. So obviously there are certain things that are not going to be able to be brought on stream as it pertains to direct alignment with the EU. But it doesn't mean we can't try as very hard as possible. If we could get the Caribbean community to align and fashion itself after the European community, then we could more than start adjusting ourselves and advancing ourselves with the effective reforms.
Yeah.
That's
but
just
I just
how
want
I
to
see
give
it.
an example to reference back to my question. When I thought of that question, I thought of the Donald Trump, President of the United States, inviting just a few or select members of CARICOM to his summit in Florida. Now, when we're looking at negotiations, or we see negotiations happening among these various community groups, the EU is always seen as a united bloc, and all of the entire community is part of negotiation conversations. But again, when it comes to CARICOM, it's always a selected few. It's never the entire community gets to be part of the conversation or part of the negotiation.
Well, one of the things I gather that as it pertains, and you see, that in itself, that's a very good observation. And the reason for that is as it pertains to what the agenda is.
Yeah.
That meeting that is happening with the President of the United States is actually just happening between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. And that would have a lot to do with the pressing issue of what happens and what's the future of Venezuela looking like. One, and I'm not telling you based on my observations and my analysis and currently what is going on and why Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, not because I saw an agenda, but it could very well be that it's about the future of Venezuela, the future of the oil and gas and energy sector in the region as it relates to Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, Guyana, and the United States, and how do we move forward and what's the next steps. It also speaks to security because we need to root out the threats that exist in the region as it pertains to gangs and terrorism and that sort of thing, and the the sovereignty of nations as it pertains to maritime borders and that sort of thing. So, because that's an issue that Ghana is facing with regard to Venezuela. So those are the issues that would be needed to be discussed in that context, I gather. And for me, I feel that it's a remarkable thing that Trinidad and Tobago is a small island developing state. Ghana is not a small island developing state. Ghana is a developing nation, right? But for a small island developing state like Trinidad and Tobago to find itself in the presence of the U.S. president having to discuss serious matters is a huge win. And I don't believe, my memory does not recall Trinidad and Tobago having been in the presence of the U.S. President Trump in the past. And that tells you that alignment and taking unpopular decisions, but with the intention to get the maximum benefits, has its rewards if you play that card very right. And I credit to the Prime Minister. You have to give credit where it's due. I say that all the time on this show, on other shows. I give credit where it's due. When somebody's right, they're right. When they're wrong, they're wrong. And when I don't agree, I respectfully don't agree. But in this instance, this is a win. And, we can only grow from that and benefit from that. And until things change, which is what politics is about and what foreign policy is about, it's not standardized, it's not linear as Amory would like it to be. That's probably during a period when he served, it was cut and, very linear and very, very standardized and that sort of thing. Different time, different period, different era, different hegemony that we're dealing with. Therefore, different approach needs to be taken. And I'm almost 100% sure that if the approach that he wants us to take as a former foreign minister was taken by this administration, there was going to be no meeting with no U.S. president in no Florida for anything. We would have probably been seeing things flying over our heads and seeing countries doing very well and wondering, so what about us? I don't, as a Trinidadian, as a Trinbagonian citizen, I don't want to be asking, well, what about us? I want to be up there. As I said, you Gen Zs will understand the language I'm about to use. I want to be right up there with the top dogs. I want my flag. The same way we were excited to see Bad Bunny flying our flag in the Super Bowl halftime, I want to see Trinidad and Tobago's flag at the front of everything that is important, relevant, and critical to Trinidad and Tobago's development as much as possible. And I feel very happy that we're there, and I want us to always be there. And that's what Trinidad and Tobago citizens should root themselves in: national pride, being relevant, being present, being at the front of the line, being in the direct vision of world leaders, and maximum benefits to the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago citizens. And that's exactly what the Prime Minister said yesterday.
Well, I think that is a perfect way to end this conversation this morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed, for sitting with Taki and I, with our viewers, to share your thoughts on this.
It's always a pleasure to be with you. And I would make a commitment in early 2026 to find myself on set so we can make it a little more excited.
I would love that. I would love that. I was actually thinking just this morning, I was like, Shane Mohammed he don't come on set only for elections or budget or, but he doesn't
I need to
come on
start
set.
making myself present on set. That's a goal that I intend to follow through with in 2026. So yes, that's something that I need to do.
Nice. Well,
it's
you are
just
welcome.
that I have very late nights, so that
Yes.
I did not go to bed until 2 a.m. and then had to get up in order to come on set. And then I have a series of meetings throughout the course of the day. So that I'll be on the move. I have to go. One is physical, one is online, and I have to lectures this evening. Sometimes I need sleep.
Yeah. Non-sleep is important because your mind is not as sharp if you're tired.
Exactly.
So remember that. But thanks
All right,
again.
lady. It was very nice to
day.
be here. I hope I'll see you all next in person.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
You too. All right, so that brings us to the end of AM Prime this morning. I really appreciate Dr. Shane Mohammed for joining us and sharing that this is something that it is, it's a trending topic. So we hope to have more of these in the future just to keep you updated. I will leave you with this. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. So that is your quote for today, that you can meditate on it, and I hope you take it and just have a great day. Your thoughts are so important. One positive thought can make a huge difference, so keep that in mind. We have Sean Michael Small on the hour of 8 o'clock with Talking Points, so stay tuned for that. And Tiki and I will see you back here again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan, and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we